Four Knights of the Apocalypse chapter 120 is out, and it was another great chapter. We got our first instance in one of these couple of matchups for the initial climax of this arc, as well as some really interesting reveals involving Mortlach and Ironside as well. So we're going to get into this with this chapter. Before all that, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel, and it makes me very much encouraged to keep these videos up. The anime comes out next month, and I am very excited to say that I'm going to try my very best to cover that alongside the manga. So, a lot's coming up for Four Knights, so look forward to it. Now with all that out of the way, let's get right into the chapter. So chapter 120 of Four Knights of the Apocalypse, titled Banquets for Braves. And this chapter starts off with the main group confronting Rosebanks, asking where they sent Percival. As, with a close-up of Rosebank, we then get a close-up of her Chaos Staff, as we then see Arthur's eye, as it's shown that he is watching this fight through the Chaos Staff, meaning that whenever Arthur wants to, he can see what's going on with all of his subordinates, as long as they have a Chaos Staff that he can see through, which is really cool. It means when he has the opportunity to, he can be informed of what his knights are doing and who they're fighting against. It's a nice way for him to get information firsthand without being on the battlefield. I don't know why I didn't do this prior, but either way, I'm kind of liking this little bit of extra detail for the Chaos Staffs. Arthur then begins to talk about the situation with Ironside, who was right next to him, that Mortlach got his group to fight the Four Knights, and they've even brought Percival into Mortlach's dueling chamber. As Ironside then begins to say that it was definitely an amazing thing that just happened, and that'll definitely eliminate one of the Four Knights, and the prophecy will collapse for good. Since no magic is allowed in the duelist chamber, all they can rely on is skill in combat. And Ironside reveals that Mortlach's sword outclasses his own, meaning that Percival's fate is sealed. So that's another piece of information. Percival couldn't beat Ironside, and seemingly from his training, he might not have been able to even make it past Ironside's memory that Lancelot had. And chances are Ironside wasn't even going full force, and that version of Ironside he fought was also poisoned. So, meaning if Percival can't beat a weakened Ironside in straight sword combat, Mortlach, who is said to be his superior in terms of combat, is just crazy to think about. But we move on to the dueling chamber. As Mortlach says, "This is our second encounter, but I never gave you my name." Is Mortlach. Percival then wants to ask him a question, which Mortlach then says, "Go right ahead and ask me what you want." Now, instead of asking, "What am I?" Percival just goes on to say, "You said the monuments behind us represent all that we're shouldering. But who's that behind you? Does he know everything that you're doing right now? How you're taking the living space of the people of Britannia like King Arthur ordered you to? Or all the pain you're causing the other clans?" As Percival is remembering the empty spaces across the land of Britannia that Arthur is taking for his Chaos Dimension holding Camelot, as well as all the people he's met, the demons, the fairies, and the giant. Mortlach then goes on to say, "When I was young, I spent nearly every moment with my sister." We're getting backstory for Mortlach and even Ironside for this, so this is really cool. He goes on to say that his sister was 5 years older than him, and their mother died while they were young, and their father drank from her death, and so he beat them consistently. But he stated that his sister protected him and raised him like any parent would, and eventually she fell in love with Ironside and became pregnant and got married. Percival hears "my dad's child," as he's beginning to say, "You mean," but then Mortlach says, "But the Holy War crushed all of their joy. The stinking poison shed from the Demon King's body, and it sickened my sister. Ironside tried every treatment he could, but it was no use in the end," as she then later died. Which is crazy, because this also ties in the one main thing that they kind of have against the demons, because the Demon King, who, as we all remember at the end of Seven Deadly Sins, he merged with the land of Britannia when he had no vessel, and became this giant Cthulhu-esque monster that the Sins had to defeat. So, yeah, nice way to tie back into that final fight, and that being the reason that this whole instance for Mortlach and Ironside even happened, with their tragedies. Mortlach then goes to say that Deodora is the child that his sister left behind, in his soul's shining light, that he risks his life to protect them. And Percival's like, "Wait, does that make him my brother?" Mortlach goes on to say that the poisoned managed to reach into the womb, poisoning Diordra while he was still being born. And his days are numbered, unfortunately. But he says he only lives now thanks to the protection of Camelot in their eternal kingdom. So this does 100% confirm that Diordra would be dead if he wasn't in Camelot. And because he's in Camelot, for the power of chaos and Arthur is keeping him alive and well, even though he still has to take medicine and all that, he's still living past what he normally probably would have died way earlier in his life, like their mother did. Mortlach then says, "Do you know what that means?" as he throws off his helmet and begins yelling at Percival. "It means you're the ones trying to take him from me. To take the only place Diordra has, to take his very life. And you have no right to rip everything away from him." And then Percival clenches his fists, looks down, and says, "I know how you feel, but I have to stop King Arthur. And my dad too. And most of all, my friends are counting on me. I can't lose this." And before we continue on to this, let me just say this. I like the hypocrisy in a sense, because you need to protect someone you care about, but you're also doing horrible things to others that you've never met. Obviously, the whole racism stuff against all the demons, the goddesses, the giants, and the fairies, because of the whole thing that happened with the Holy War. But I do think that everyone should kind of realize, even though there's a ton of resentment, it takes a long time for these feelings from war to just go away. But the Sins know that the whole reason the Holy War even happened is because the Supreme Deity and the Demon King just decided to do some endless game. It's not some grand master plan. They just wanted to have this Holy War and make it last forever. That's the crazy thing. And so because of that stupid whole thing that they came up with, it caused every one of the all of the races and clans to suffer, and that ends up making things even harder, because now, because of that Holy War that ended because of the Sins, the aftermath of that has affected so many people that they are willing to take out their anger and frustration and sadness and despair towards the others, because Arthur is giving them a chance at happiness. And obviously Mortlach doesn't want to lose the only real family he has left, meaning that he has to do what he has to do to keep his nephew alive in Camelot. And with the prophecy saying that the four knights are going to destroy Arthur and Camelot, it means he's going to lose someone else precious to him. And so I can understand why he's doing all this, but at the same time, it is obviously wrong. So again, the hypocrisy in the statement is kind of crazy, but you got to have these types of villains that do believe they're doing the right thing by doing what's basically kind of wrong, if in the simplest of terms. So the chapter continues, and Mortlach, in his frustration, then swings his sword at Percival, stating then our only choice is to fight for it, as he strikes Percival in a nice 2-page spread with a quick slash attack. He then begins to recite the Holy Knight's Creed, crush the evil, rescue the weak, and be someone who risks their life for what is important to them, as he continues to strike Percival. Percival barely manages to block Harry's attacks. Percival then begins to start crying, saying, "Look, let's stop this. I'm sure there's a good way to avoid fighting each other. I'm sure of it." And obviously there is going to be an obvious way to stop fighting with each other. But like I said, the resentment, anger, and sadness runs deep in a lot of people because of the Holy War. So it's not something just to let go of. And Mortlach is continuously getting frustrated with Percival's talking, saying, "I told you, boy, the only way to leave this chamber is if your opponent's dead or knocked out. That's the hand you've been dealt," as he knocks Percival back. But then something interesting happens. Mortlach begins to go fast, and fast enough to leave after images, as he states, "Not even your father could fully defend this attack. If he couldn't, you don't stand a chance." As he then readies his sword with all this after images, because obviously this isn't cloning because magic isn't allowed, just pure swordsmanship. He's so fast he created all of these after images, and as he states, "This attack contains all of it, every single thing I feel." And in a huge 2-page spread, we see Mortlach's attack, Thousand Cross, as he unleashes a barrage of slash attacks on Percival, leaving all his after images surrounding him. Percival is then knocked to the ground with a huge boom, as the chapter ends with Mortlach saying, "You must die, die for the sake of my light," ending the chapter. So, Four Knights of the Apocalypse, another really good chapter. I enjoyed it. I like that we got more into Mortlach's life and his reasonings for all this. We all know that he was doing this for Diordra, but now we got answers as to why Diordra is sick. And that's because his mother was poisoned from the Demon King while she was pregnant with Diordra. And while she died and gave birth to Diordra, the poison was deeply affecting Diordra, and he would have died if not for Arthur and the protective powers of Camelot. And now Mortlach has to do all of these things to keep Diordra safe. And he's desperate because this prophecy is stating that the Four Knights of the Apocalypse are going to bring ruin to Camelot and defeat Arthur. And so he's basically going to lose the only place that keeps his nephew safe, his only real family and source of happiness in this world. And so I completely understand why he's fighting, but at the same time, we all know that what all the Chaos Knights and Arthur are doing is wrong. Because obviously more violence and hatred after a war is just going to lead to another war, and it's just going to continue with this whole cycle. So it will never be ending unless someone can just stop the fighting and get everybody to try and make peace, which the Sins did technically try to do. However, with Arthur and Camelot, it just did not hit, and I want to know how Arthur came to his overall conclusion of doing what he's doing now. And I feel like we'll get the answers to that later on in the series. But either way, another great chapter. Mortlach is overpowering Percival, showcasing that he's stronger than Ironside in pure swordsmanship, and if Percival can use magic, there's a good chance that Percival might not win this, but I do feel like this is the point in the story where Percival needs a W. I've stated this multiple times, but Percival needs a win. He desperately needs a solo win in this series because as much as I love wins that involve teamwork and synergy, the main protagonist has to be someone to win a fight on their own at least a few times, especially when it comes down to the final fight against the final villain. But the final fight against Arthur is going to be all four knights, obviously. Either way, another great chapter, great action. I love seeing more of Mortlach's backstory and his reasoning. I feel like there's definitely some more stuff that could have been added, but which will be revealed later on, like obviously the truth about Percival and how he became possessed by a life spirit when he was a baby, and why Vargas took him away when he was a baby. So I feel like those answers still need to be explored, and Mortlach seems to be the only person to do so. And I also like that Arthur is able to just witness the fight that's going on through the Chaos Staff. That's a really nice utilization of that item he created for his knights, and he's able to stay in the know as long as they have these staffs with them. Showcasing that Arthur, despite not being on the battlefield, he will still have some sort of a presence and be able to see what the enemy is doing, as long as obviously his knights have those staves on them. And with that, we're basically going to have, from what I can tell, a break from the Percival section and go back to the main group in the next chapter, if I'm being correct. We still have Tristan versus the Testament Beast. We still have the rest of the group versus the Chaos Knights, and we have Lancelot versus Nanashi. Which one of these is coming next? I got no clue. If I know Nakaba, chances are I might go from one hype fight to another, so if we're lucky, Lancelot versus Nanashi will start next week. Then we'll move on to Tristan versus the Testament Beast, and then the rest of the the Peanut Gallery against the Chaos Knights. I know I'm calling the Peanut Gallery, it's just I need a better name than just calling them Tristan Platoon and Percival Platoon to save time for just, talking. But that group is basically going to have to fight because they have Gawain with them. I feel like Gawain still needs to get her shackles off. I didn't mention her at all in this chapter because it's just one panel of her still being held up by Donnie. Either way, I feel like Gawain's going to be like the main thing that's going to get that group through their fight with the Chaos Knights, because obviously Gawain took care of all of them on her own if it wasn't for Nanashi and Mortlach, getting the jump on her. Either way, I'm excited. Another great chapter for Four Knights of the Apocalypse, and I cannot wait for next week. But what did you guys think? Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really does help, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel. With the anime coming out, I do have some stuff planned besides, going through the chapters and then later on episodes as the episodes do air. So I want to make some really good Four Knights content for you guys in between all that, so look forward to all that. But with all that said and done, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have an awesome day.